Hey, solos! I have another bonus episode for you. Another solo story about an awesome person who goes to Disney World solo and also gets to share about how magical it is to go to Disney World solo. Hi, everyone. It's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. As I said, this is another bonus episode. It's another solo story with a great woman who I met on Instagram. Brittany, also known as Brit on Main Street, is a content creator and a teacher who lives in Kentucky, and she goes to the parks solo. We had the most amazing conversation about smells, bars and lounges, the fact that you can really socialize a lot if you wanted to at Disney when you're going solo, but also how it can be like a really therapeutic place because it's a place of love and connection and a place to be yourself. And it was just a really great conversation. So I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed talking to her. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. We are building this community of solo travelers to Disney World. This is available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And guess what? You can listen and subscribe and rate and follow on all of those things. Although I do think that subscribing and following is basically the same thing, right? But you can do all those things. You can also connect with me on Instagram, Disney_solo_magic, and on Facebook, Disney Solo Magic. And just like I met Britt through social media, it is wonderful to connect with you all through social media too. So if you want to come and do your solo story, like let's do it. It was so wonderful. The lineup of speakers that I have for June, and that is on top of the extra programming that I am doing for the podcast, which I'm just really excited about. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you love the podcast, and we should just get into it. Hey, Brittany. It is so
Hi.
wonderful to be able to connect with you on Instagram and meet you via Zoom. It's funny how often I am now meeting strangers on the internet and totally having wonderful conversations. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
Can you tell me a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your Disney journey?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so obviously my name is Brittany. So my Instagram is Brit on Main Street. So a lot of people have started calling me Brit, but the funny part of that is in my real life, no one calls me Brit. I just didn't want my whole name in my Instagram bio. So I started going to Disney. I kind of have a unique path because I'm not the typical born and raised Disney adult, I feel like. So I went to Disney for the first time in 2021 and pretty much just became super addicted and hooked and sucked into the Disney magic. Of course, like so many other people, I'm sure can relate. And since then, I've just honestly been obsessed. And now I'm a Disney adult.
The funny thing actually about your handle on Instagram, because it's Brit on, I thought it was
Oh,
like Britain, like Brit, like a
Briton.
Brit. Yeah. So at one point I was like, is she British? And then I was like, I'm pretty sure she's not.
Yeah, I've made that mistake with a couple people here recently, and I have a friend is Jedi Alley, and I was like, "Is it Jediley? Jedaley? Like, is this a nickname?" And then, yeah, it happens. But no,
Yeah.
I'm not British. I live in Kentucky, so I am a distance Disney lover too.
Yeah, well, I'm in Canada, and then someone I
Oh
spoke to
my
yesterday
gosh,
actually is in the UK. So that's why,
cool.
distance to Kentucky is actually not that
Yeah,
bad in comparison
true.
to everyone I've spoken to so far.
Yeah, which is kind of fun too on Instagram because I've been able to connect with people, like you said, from literally all over. And I was voice messaging a lady who lives in Scotland, I think it was. And her response to hearing my voice, she was like, "Oh my gosh, you have the cutest accent." And I was like, "God, that's so funny," because in Kentucky, I don't feel like I have that country of an accent. But of course, to her, she was like, "Wow, your voice is just so unique." I'm like, I feel the same about you. So technology's cool like that.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many slight accents or dialects in the States.
Yes.
And I think that in England, they really embrace them and they can peg them. And I think in the States, most people are like, no, I'm fine. It's literally everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You mentioned that you started going to the parks like for the first time in 2021, and I had a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about like whether or not there's a correlation between like going to Disney as an adult, especially going solo, and COVID. Is there any correlation to you, like for you, that like 2021 was the first time you ever went?
Not not specifically, mainly because when I went in 2021, it was a massive family trip. So I like I said, I never went to Disney as a kid, but I also didn't feel like I lacked that growing up. Like I never longed to go to Disney as a child. We traveled a lot and did a lot of other things like football games, traveling in the States, cruises. So I never felt like, oh my gosh, I'm missing out. And then as I became an adult, I think I became fascinated and obsessed with like the theming and just the amount of effort that goes into like the productions and the costumes and the scents. Like I love experiences. So as an adult, I started to really want to go to Disney. And then in 2021, my dad and my mom and my dad, but mainly my dad, wanted to plan a big family trip to take my brother and sister in law's kids. So we took my nieces and nephews, my parents, my now husband, and then my brother and sister in law. And we all went in 2021. We actually went, we had no clue what we were doing. Okay. Um, we went on the opening weekend of the 50th anniversary. So we were like trying to scramble to book this trip. The only thing available pretty much was Animal Kingdom Lodge, which is like, what? Wow, what a tragedy. The only thing available.
Yeah,
But
really.
so we all stayed there. And my husband and I, since we don't have kids, we kind of did a lot of our own things. And when I tell you we hit the ground running when we got there, we like got off the plane, dropped our stuff at the lodge, and then went to Hollywood Studios. And pretty much like the next, I think we stayed for 4 or 5 days. We were just like going, 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 going. So I just pretty much became obsessed after that. And I will say the funny thing, before we went to Disney, I was always like, yeah, I mean, I know there's Disney adults who are just obsessed. Like they want to do is go to Disney, and I don't know, like I don't really understand it because there's so many other things that I want to do. And then after our first trip, I was like, oh my gosh,
Oh, I
wait,
get it. I get it.
I'm a Disney adult. I get it. I love it. It's so fun.
Well, I think when you said that you liked like experiences, right? And I don't think you used the word immersive, but I like associate that word with how you were describing it, right? Like
Yeah,
sense and thoughtfulness, and like when
100%.
you're there, you're like, "Oh my God,
Mhm.
like there's literally not one thing I'm looking at or smelling or hearing that has not
Hearing.
been thought about."
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that. I like even when I host, I love to host, but when I host, I'm like big about having the right type of music on and like sense and just in my life, I like that experience. So yeah, even so my last trip, I stayed at Coronado and I laid out on the hammock for a while. I actually took a nap, which is so unlike my personality, but it was amazing. But there was a speaker right there with like themed music and sounds, and it just adds to the experience. Like you just know in Disney you're getting a 10 out of 10 experience.
Totally, totally. And when I've gone with people and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to watch like something normal on television or listen to my normal music." I was like, "Ooh, sorry.
Not,
Don't
no, we're not. No,
no,
we're
no,
not.
no, 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 no. What stays on the television is the thing that says our name or the music from the resort or a movie that corresponds to the resort we are at. I don't know where you got this normal listening or
100%.
watching."
Or the Disney cartoons
Yes.
on repeat. And then when it, I don't care how many times it stops and tells me that the nighttime stories are scheduled at certain times, I'm going to keep watching.
Yeah.
That is like the ambiance of my Disney hotel stay is the cartoons on repeat and the little thing that pops up and that's like nighttime stories scheduled at, and it says like Frozen and all of that. Like I'll never turn it off. I wish I could get it at my house here.
Yeah, it's funny because when I got
Yeah.
to the hotel the last time I went, it was like 10 in the morning. I had got to the airport at 3 in the morning, so I was
Oh my
ready to
gosh.
nap, and it
Right.
had my name and the resort music, and I was like, that is what is going to stay on for my whole nap.
Yes, you're like, that is my lullaby, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, when I go to like the moderate resorts, well, I guess it's all the resorts, and they're playing like regular music at the pools, I was like, "Ooh, I'm pretty sure you're gonna need to have some jazz here. We're at the like, we're at the New Orleans hotel. Sorry."
I love it. Yes, we appreciate those little touches for sure.
Yeah. So can you like talk a little bit about like you going solo? Like when did you
Yeah.
go solo after that? How often do you go solo? What are their solo vacations like for you?
Yeah. So for me, going solo to Disney is a lot of things. First of all, I think we are so spoiled here with our flight situation coming out of Kentucky because, and I've posted about this a couple times, but I'm able to get round trip flights on some dates for $45, $60. So, like, it's just impossible to say no to that. Like, how am I supposed to say no to a $45 flight? Now, typically, the flight will be 1 or 2 nights. So, like, it'll leave super early in the morning. So when I land, I still have that whole day, which is ideal for me. Like, I love a travel day that I get to actually do stuff on. And then it normally leaves to come home back to Kentucky in the evening. And sometimes that can be like 11 or 12, like midnight, which for some people is insane. But for me, I'm just like, you know what? It's perfect because you get that whole day in Disney and can just make the most of it, literally do whatever you want. I normally, of course, like check my bags and use that day as an extra day to explore. So I think that's also helped me travel to Disney solo more is because getting there is a lot more affordable, I know, than some other people's scenarios. So that's one thing. And then also, so my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer last year in July. And so Disney just became kind of like an escape for me.
Mm.
So like being able to book trips and just go, like I just went like a couple weeks ago. It's just it really truly is an escape.
I'm really sorry to hear about your dad. That's really rough. And it's really interesting the more I talk to people, the more especially adults, obviously. That'd be
Right.
weird. That'd be weird if I was talking to like a little 8-year-old, like, why are you at Disney by yourself? And they're like, well, first off,
Well, you see here actually
yeah,
my trauma.
yeah. um but I when I'm talking to adults who are going solo, oftentimes there's like, yes, I really like feel comfortable and I love everything, and then there's usually a story underneath it that is
Yeah.
like, this is a place that I can heal, this is a place that is safe, this is a place that I feel like I can kind of step away from the trauma and like rebuild in a particular way or do some
Yeah.
healing and connect with myself. Like I don't think those stories are rare, and that is kind of an interesting thing about the podcast. Like I think it's interesting when people identify and share those stories because that helps bring everyone closer together for that healing, right?
Yes, 100%. And actually, I think Disney in general has that power of bringing people together. It, from my experience traveling solo, you can meet people from so many different walks of life if you're open to meeting people traveling solo. Um, and I know I've sat at many lounges and bars and just talked to couples next to me, people traveling solo, families, and yeah, everyone has such a unique story and experience. And then you just bond over Disney. And I think that's another thing, another reason why I do travel to Disney solo is because, like you said, it feels like a safer space because I mean, where else can you be an adult walking around with ears on your head all day and no and nobody's judging you? Like I just truly feel like in Disney, it's like a place of just love and joy and anything goes. Like whatever you want, the cast members are going to do their best to make it happen. Like uh, the service, the food, the drinks, obviously the parks. Like it's just a beautiful place that you can escape to.
Totally, totally. And it's like, when you are living in your normal world, you're like your normal self with your normal pressures and your normal anxieties and all,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. But I feel like you can be a special form of self when you are at Disney because you don't need to worry about so many things. And I think that's different than like regular travel solo, especially as a woman or a femme person, that you're
Yeah.
like constantly worried about your safety and like all these things.
Mhm.
And at Disney, I feel like you can just like pick up yourself, go to this other location, be like a more full expression of yourself, perhaps, that in a non
Yes.
judgmental, safe environment, and like do both the inner work you want as well as like just having fun.
Yes, that is very, very true. I think as you were talking, I was thinking about just the outfits and how everyone can take their own. Yeah, like I love that part of Disney. I'm sure many other adults relate to that. Like I love the outfits and the accessories and the planning and the cutesy stuff. And I think it just, like you said, it allows you to embrace whatever little part of you that maybe in your normal day to day you don't get to embrace. I mean, I'm a teacher. I teach elementary kids, so I could totally wear all my cute Disney characters all the time. But being in Disney, it's just like anything goes, and I love that. As an adult, especially, I'm always trying to tell my adult friends, I'm like, you need to go, you need to go, even if you don't have kids. And then I think I'm like, they're thinking what I
They're
thought before I ever went to Disney. They're like,
they're thinking you are crazy.
yeah. Now I'm the person that they think is crazy, but I don't care.
Totally. I told a friend who was coming back from maternity leave, and like in Canada, our maternity leave is like longer than yours in the States. Yeah.
Jealous. We
So
don't
we
even
get,
want to go there.
yeah, so like we get 8 to 18 months. So she's coming back from her maternity leave after a year, and she's like, I
Wow.
kind of want to do something before I go back to the
Yes.
office. And so now she has like a 3-year-old and a baby. And I was like, let's go to Disney. And she's like,
Yes.
I feel like I should wait with my kids. And I was like, that's a terrible
No.
idea.
You're like, actually, it's the total opposite.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, you're gonna have a really amazing time if you just go without your kids. And she's like, oh, I'll think about it. And I was like, wah, wah, wah.
Disney with children is a different experience, and it's
Totally.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful for what it is. I've seen that with my nieces and nephews. However, Disney as an adult is just a different level of joy. And I
Yeah.
agree. Like as an adult, if anyone's listening and has kids and has only been with their kids, I would encourage you to go solo or with friends, even because it's just truly magical and you get to do and experience things on a different level that with children, kids are great, but like that holds you back a little bit at times.
Yeah, and I say to people who I feel like it's a safe space, this is a totally safe space, that you can be like a full expression of yourself as an adult because there are lounges and restaurants and music and like all of that stuff. But you can also be like your inner child, which like how
Yeah,
often do we get to do that in a safe way, right?
right. Right. That's kind of like the ears for me. I've always loved Halloween and I loved theme parties and themed events. Obviously, I live in Kentucky with the Kentucky Derby and just like the pageantry of all of that. And Disney, I think, just embodies that on a regular basis, which is like so special and fun. It's so extra, but it's also great. I mean, this is kind of a crazy story, but on my last trip, I ran into a couple and she had the cutest hat on, and I think it was from one of the recent like celebration lines. I can't remember which one, but it was like painted with all the characters on it. It was beautiful, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love your hat." Well, then I ran back into them at Trader Sam's, and we ended up sitting next to each other. And I was like, "Hey, you're the lady with the hat." And she took her hat off and was going to give it to me, and I was just like, I cannot. I was like, I honestly, I love you for that, but I cannot take this hat. And she was like, no, I have an extra one. Like, really, I have two. I somehow ended up with two. But I was just like, I just can't. I just can't. I'm sorry. But that is the level of love that I think,
Yeah.
to go back to what you were saying, like the level of love that is shared amongst Disney lovers and acceptance of solo travelers. What if you're at Disney? Like that lady just they were just the sweetest couple. And yeah, it was special.
Yeah. Brittany, of all of the like people I've spoken to, or like even just the things that I've recorded, you're the first person who has actually said the word love, like the word love that is shared amongst Disney people, or like not amongst Disney people, but like in the Disney bubble, right? And of course
Yes.
amongst people there, but like yes, there is this extra like layer of love, and maybe that is the safety and security that a lot of
Hmm.
people mention.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Yeah. So what is something that you would do solo that you wouldn't do if you were there with your nieces and nephews, or with your husband, or with
Mhm.
your parents, or a
Mhm.
friend?
Yeah, so there's a million things that I think come to mind for me, honestly, for that, just because Disney has so much to offer, in my opinion, that not everyone wants to always do. And like, I am an adventure spirit, so I'm okay with just like hitting the ground running. So for me, I think I saw this difference between when I was solo versus I recently went in a small group with some friends and my husband, and that is just resort hopping because I love, love, love to see and experience and smell all of the resorts. I don't care if every shop has the same items. I want to walk through the shops. I want to sit and get me my coffee. Like, I want to just savor every resort for what it has. And I understand that that's not necessarily what other people might want to do on a vacation or a trip. Um, so definitely that, and just riding all the transportation. And for me, when I travel solo, it's more like I'm just going wherever the wind takes me, like wherever I feel like going or whatever comes to my mind. And I think that's different versus when you're with other people, you have to somewhat care that the whole group is doing what they might want to do or enjoying it, because everybody deserves to enjoy it. But for me, like, I just truly could walk around all the resorts all day long and be totally fine with that. Like, I'm putting in 20,000 steps just in the resorts and I'm good with it. But I know that other people, that's not ideal for everybody.
Well, one thing I say a lot in this podcast is like Disney wants you to go to the resorts and walk around and look at it for sure. Like you shouldn't feel intimidated or like you're trespassing, because
Hmm.
like you're in the Disney bubble. They want you to do those things. And when
Yes.
you are with a group too, it's kind of harder to sneak around. I'm using air quotes because you're not actually sneaking around, but if you're like looking at something that you don't like feel like you should be there, although you're totally fine. I mean,
Yes.
in most cases, then it's easier to do it as one person and to be like, oh, look at this. Oh my God, look at this little
Yeah.
hidden bar or whatever. I'm going to
Yes.
come back with other people, maybe, but maybe not.
That is actually, I had that exact experience with, and I don't know the name of this little hidden area, but it's in the Riviera behind the coffee shop.
Yeah.
That that
Yes,
little
that
like
little room.
library. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Okay, so it's gorgeous in there. And after I saw it, I was like, I need to bring my husband here. Like, we need to just come and relax in there and like have a drink or whatever and just chill. Like, it was just beautiful. And I feel like I would not have noticed something like that if I wasn't actually just wandering and embracing and taking it all in. Because truly, Disney has so much of that. I mean, like I said, I feel like I'm a baby Disney adult because I've only been going since 2021. So I know I have so much to see and experience, but even experienced travelers to Disney, they're like, there's always something new to be discovered. Like, there's
Totally.
just always something beautiful around the corner. I recently on my Instagram, I did a poll for for Earth Day because I feel like a hot topic is Animal Kingdom a whole day park or a half day park? So
Hmm.
that that was the poll. Results were about 50-50, which I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, you're not surprised. But I had someone message me and say that she had spent 2 days recently in Animal Kingdom. And she was like, I still don't think I saw it all. And I'm
Yeah.
like, see, that's like the truth of it. You just can't see it all in one go.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody who said like if you're in Animal Kingdom and you look to the right or the left, you'll find a hidden path and you'll think like, "Oh, I shouldn't go down that path." But unless there's a sign that says don't go down that path, like that path is for you to go down. Like go
Yeah.
down that path. Like where are you going to get lost? You're going to get lost in a tree? Like then you just turn
In
around.
a jungle,
Yeah.
right? It's perfect. Like you need to get lost there. Animal Kingdom is my best friend's favorite park to go to solo, and
Yeah.
because for that reason, she's like, I just want to soak it all up and walk around and just explore like the nature vibes and just see all the things. It's beautiful.
So what's one tip you'd give to other solo travelers?
I think my tip would be to, like I said, just go where the wind takes you. Like if you're solo, you don't have to have as much of a rigid agenda and see how you're feeling that day. Like whatever is on your mind or cool things that might be happening, whether it's characters in the lobby of a resort that you just want to like sit and watch and talk to the cast members. I mean, I've done that before where it's just like I spent all this time talking to a cast member and enjoyed it. But give yourself the freedom to experience Disney and whatever you might find that day.
And I think too that you had said that you sometimes rent through DVC. And
Yes.
I think too, like when you are on your own, it's easier to kind of take quote unquote a risk for a different hotel or a different
Yeah.
experience because you also aren't balancing the needs of like somebody else and maybe they're particular about things or kids where they just need to like get in. Do you want to talk a
Yes.
little bit about like DVC as a solo traveler or DVC
Sure.
point rental as a solo traveler?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's another thing that I've discovered in my just a few years of Disneying, I guess, is I'm kind of frugal, honestly, about where I spend my money. And in my opinion, the deluxe resorts at Disney rates are extremely expensive, to each their own, like if that's your thing. But for me, I just can't fathom paying that. However, I love a lot of the deluxe resorts and I love the perks that come with it, mainly like the extended hours. So with renting DVC points, we have found that when I go by myself or with my husband or friends, you can often stay at a DVC resort for the price of a moderate or sometimes less, depending on what your price per point is. So for me, like it's just a way I think to experience some of the resorts that I would, like I said, I would never pay Disney prices for at at a lower cost. And I know there is some risk involved with that, whether you go through like DVC rental companies or if you rent from direct from an owner. I got started renting because I personally knew an owner. So I think I had like a very low risk involved with renting points. But since then, I've rented from some people on Facebook groups. One person I had a contract with, if you are going to rent, you should be willing to ask for a contract or definitely ask to see that these people are actually DVC members, search their names, ask for reputable references from them. Like you can just post, do you have references for Brittany Bell? And like people, if they're a reputable owner and have rented before. So I don't want anyone to go throwing money at a stranger. But if you are interested in staying at a deluxe resort, you can totally make it happen on a much smaller budget than what Disney wants you to pay.
Whenever I see the prices for the deluxe resorts, I'm like, gosh, I really
Yeah.
want to, but like you are making it so that it is ludicrous
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
do
honestly,
so.
yeah, I just to each their own, like I said, but personally, I just can't imagine spending that much money on a resort, especially if you're not going to be there. Like if you're going to be hitting the ground at the parks and you're not going to have time to really soak in whatever the amenities are at that resort, then it would be really hard for me to pay some of those prices. I'd rather have a lot more money to spend on food and drinks personally.
Yeah, you're so diplomatic. I have just said on this podcast, like, I'm not paying $800 American for a room. Like, I really would like to stay in that
Yeah.
room, but not at that price. But I actually
I'd
think
like to
that's a
be there, but
yeah.
no.
I think that's a really great tip for solo travelers because especially like if you are going by yourself and you want a
Mhm.
very adult experiences. Like the deluxe
Yes.
resorts are more adult experiences, like just the theming of it, right?
Mhm.
Especially in comparison to like a value resort. And so if you wanted to like treat yourself a little bit, I think that's a great option to
Mhm.
explore DVC point rentals
Mhm.
reputably. Um, if you are there, if you're going by yourself and you want like a grown up trip.
Yes, I agree. And I think a lot, like you bring up a really good point with maybe the price of having those rooms can sometimes take out the mass amounts of families because I mean, I don't even want to pay that for myself. But if I was taking a large family, I'm like, surely I'm not paying this for y'all.
Yeah,
Like, no.
totally, totally.
And when we first, I was saying earlier, when we first went to Disney, we stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge because it was, like I said, it was like the only thing available, and so that was definitely a very interesting experience because we got there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful and grand, and it smells so good, and everything's so beautiful and amazing. So I will also say, I think that kind of spoiled me to where I'm like, oh, but it's so nice here.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
but I want to stay here again. And
it's
that's
funny.
where the DVC points definitely come into play.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you said like, "Oh, my flights are super cheap," I thought that's when you were going to be like, "So I can rationalize staying at deluxe resort," because when I get a cheap flight from Canada, it is still like $300,
Yeah.
and which to me is like a bargain. That is
Wow.
our cheap line. Oh, you look
That's like
like
really expensive for
you look
me.
sorry for me all of a sudden. So if I was if I had
No,
flights that were
I just
like
like cries.
yeah, if I had flights that were $50, I'd be like, "All right, Grand Floridian, let's get parking lot view."
Yes, I want to look into those trees. Here I
Yeah, let's
come.
do it. Let's do it. This week I posted an episode about Disney Springs, and I wonder if you have
Uh-huh.
any experiences like that you want to share, or tips or tricks about going to Disney Springs solo.
Yeah, so I love going to Springs, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier with Disney. I think has so many options for you, and if you want to meet people, if you are a solo traveler and you're looking for social interaction, you can totally find it. If you don't want it, you can also avoid it. But I think for Disney Springs, especially on my most recent trip, I wanted to try Summer House, which by the way, I loved it. I'm a total foodie. I could go on and on and on about food, but I loved it. I think they have three bars. If I'm not, I think it's the three. But I sat at one of the bars, which is a tip for solo travelers. If you do want social
Great
interaction,
tip.
sitting at a bar, I mean, the bartenders are always so friendly. And people around you normally are willing to socialize if you would like that. I've also seen people at a bar reading on their Kindle. So, I mean, anything goes. But, anyways, I sat at the bar, actually became friends with the bartender. We had the same name, ironically. And her boyfriend had came to see her, and there was an older couple next to us. Like, it didn't matter. We're, like I said, all different walks of life, just sharing this moment. I was exhausted because I had been exploring all day, but they were like, hey, do you want to go to Splitsville with us after this? I did not go, but it was just like
But
so
you could
kind.
have.
I could have, yeah. It's just very kind. And I mean, as a solo traveler, you always have to stay alert. But it was just really nice that like the Disney bubble was just so open and like, hey, if you want to come hang out with us after, you can. And Springs, I think, has a lot of stuff. Shopping, of course, food, drinks, entertainment, music, all of the things. But I've always found there's so many friendly people there. I have a whole nother story very similar at Doc Lindsay's Hangar Bar, like just becoming friends with one of the people sitting next to me, and she knew the bartender and she was like visiting her. So I think Springs offers so much to a solo traveler. Don't count it out.
And the other thing about sitting in the bar is, or sitting at the bar, is that you don't need to wait for a table. And
Oh
if
my
you're just
gosh.
one person, you're like, "Ooh, I can squeeze in my little body right there."
Oh, 100%. And that's another one of my little solo tips or hacks is that's how I've gone to Trader Sam's on two different events or two different trips because I just walk up and I'm like, "Hey, what's the wait? What about just for one?" And they're like, "Oh, one? We'll get you right in." And then you're just in. Like normally you have to put your name on the queue and wait. And then Trader Sam's, if you have not been, I would highly recommend it because it's an experience in itself. But there's communal tables. And so as a Disney solo traveler, that also gives you an opportunity for, like I said, if you would like to interact with other people at that communal table, you can. And it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then if you don't, that's also awesome, right? Like there's so many things to look at and like, yeah, that's awesome. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I have one more question for you, although I feel like we could talk all afternoon. So what is your favorite park and what do you want solo travelers to like do or see or eat when they are there?
Oh gosh, no. I love to hate this question because I'm such an everything girl. Like I need all the things. So all the
Just
parts.
go, you're like, just go to any park and just smell things.
Like a dog, sniff your way around and you're bound to love it. No.
I
Okay, so
mean, you're
right
not
now,
wrong.
yeah, if I had to pick a favorite park right now, my heart is telling me to say Epcot. I think
Oh,
I'm a foodie. Like I said, I love that it's always changing, like the art festivals, food and wine. I mean, there's just always like flower and garden. There's always something new to be discovered. But I think Epcot embodies so much of what Disney has to offer. There's princesses there, so many character meet and greets. I mean, the new rides. I personally love Ratatouille. Like that's like a heart movie for me. So I love that ride. I could just sit and watch the Skyliner from like going over that Paris view. I just
yeah.
love that. Um, the fireworks, like to me, Epcot just has so much shopping and all the countries. It's just beautiful. It's for adults and kids. So solo travelers and family travelers. I know people with kids often say Epcot like wasn't they don't want to go to Epcot because it's just for adults, but also disagree on that. There's so much to do.
Well, we don't need to argue with them if they want to not bring their children. It's funny because every time I go to Epcot when it's busy and there's families, I was like, "What are you all doing here?"
Can you leave, please?
I'm just like, I just wanted adults to like walk around and eat with. Like, why is it so busy?
I just wanted my avocado margarita. So that you got to get that. Like if you go to Epcot, you have to go in the Mexico Pavilion and you have to get the avocado margarita, of course. Love that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. That's actually why I like to go to Epcot. I like to get into Epcot through the Skyliner because you don't have that main entrance of
Yes.
people that I just always like fills me with fear to be like, oh no, are you going to want to eat at the food booth?
Are
No,
you going to be
probably
taking
not.
my seat? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good tip. Like if you, because when I was new, excuse me, when I was new to coming to Disney, I didn't realize that you could go into Epcot in two different areas. So it's an important tip to know. You can access it from the World Showcase. So you need to do that. And the Skyliner. I love the Skyliner.
For sure. Actually, that like image of the Skyliner over Paris, I have a photograph of that in my office at work. And
Oh, I
I'm
love it.
like, I'm just like, it's like these little Disney touches. Like, if you know, you know, but if you don't, then you don't know. And that's great. All right, Brittany, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for agreeing to talk for the
Yes.
podcast. And it was wonderful connecting. How can people get in touch with you on social media?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been so fun. My Instagram is Britt on Main Street.
And for those of you listening, the link to Britt's account is down in the description of the podcast. So wherever you're listening, you can click. And so make sure you follow her. She does really, really fun content. And it's been really great to be able to like see her content and then be like, hey, do you want to chat? And then her saying yes. So well, let's hope that we see each other in the parks one day, but also
Yes,
stay connected on Instagram and maybe do
of
this
course.
again for a different topic. So thank you so much. And until next time,
Thank
goodbye.
you. Bye.
Bye. Hey, solos. I hope you like this episode and all the episodes of Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. Please remember, if you can, to support the podcast by reviewing, by rating, by subscribing, by sharing with others, and so we can continue to build this community of solo travelers who love going to Disney World and find it the most magical ever. Also connect with me on Instagram, Disney_solo_magic, as well as on Facebook. Can't wait to talk with you next week. Bye.